Okay, I've set up an entire Flickr page dedicated to the 80mm Fujifilm macro, taking a lot of test shots. In a prior video, I was actually comparing it to the 90 since that was a pertinent question. Now is the 80mm basically twice as fast, and trust me, with over 30 times repetition in testing, it is basically twice as fast. The 90 averaged 2 seconds or a hair over in a continuous autofocus striking between near and far subject, and the 80 averaged 1 second or a hair over 1 second. Anyway, I have a lot of test images on the 80, and please click the link below, including the bokeh on the 80mm at 2.8, 4, 5, 6, and f8. It does have swirly cat's eye bokeh at f2.8, but not the bad kind, as is reminiscent of Russian cheap lomography lenses with Waterhouse apertures. I was also asked specifically about comparing it to the Tikina 100mm in addition to other macro lenses, and outside of like a $15,000, I think that lens is $12,000. Outside of a $12,000 Contax macro lens, unquestionably not only is it the fastest conventional autofocus macro lens out there from anybody, it is also the highest resolution. I can say that not subjectively, but definitively and objectively. There's 3 also focus range settings on the 80mm, which by the way also has optical image stabilization, unlike the 90, which is not a macro lens. Since you can use this lens for portraiture, a lot of people wanted to ask me, specifically since I own neither lens, to compare the two, and I did that in the prior video. We actually have 3 ranges here, where it's a full range of the lens, 0.5 meters to infinity, and also for near focus for macro only, which is 0.25 to 0.5 meters, which is really... Even my Nikkor macro lenses don't have those 3 selection options. So we have OIS, also with a 1.4 teleconverter, which is a 7-element lens, the 16 elements on the 80mm. We have a 1.4 teleconverter. I would not recommend using the 2. The 1.4 teleconverter brings the focal out to 112 millimeters. What's really important in macro, size does matter in macro. Specifically, it matters for a lot of reasons. The main reason is that you're actually able to back up your front, the front of your lens hood, or specifically your front element of your lens from your subject, to actually cram some lighting in there. A lot of macro lenses, specifically like 60 millimeters and shorter, you actually have to stick the lens up the fanny of whatever it is you're shooting, and that makes getting lighting in there extremely difficult for most people, unless you have ingenious lighting mods like I've created. It's a very contrasty lens that actually have you look at the many countless test sample shots that I've actually taken here with the Fuji 80mm macro. There's only one downside, and it's not a downside at all. This lens too, and I'm also thinking that that the high resolution on this lens is due to, it has linear autofocus motors like the 90 does and many of the other newer Fujifilm lenses, but it also has, as Fuji announces, a ceramic ball bearing roller mech to keep alignment on the moving autofocus elements perfectly aligned, and I assume this has to be part of the reasoning behind the incredibly high resolution, and not merely the addition of optical image stabilization, because all test shots were done on tripod between this and the 90. The lens is absolutely incredible. It's been mind-blowing. Actually, I took a test shot yesterday, the day before yesterday. These are some test shots from someone else that had joined the group, taking some macro shots. I was actually taking a picture of a ceramic wafer, a silicon wafer. Here we go. And each one of these microchips, this is a defective silicon wafer, I have it right over here, is the size of a grain of rice. And I can make out the architecture of each. It's on a single platter before these are cut out. This is how lithography works for creating these microchips, including sensor microchips. I can actually count all the microresistors, excuse me, on this small block. It's absolutely mind-blowing. This lens is mind-blowing. I don't suffer from new toy syndrome. This, by the way, is a rental because mine is coming in late next week, so this is a 3-day rental from Fujifilm. Not a, yeah, it is a rental, the leasing system for Fujifilm Professional Services. This lens is mind-blowing. I have nearly 15 macro lenses. I kind of consider myself a bit of a macro guru. Well, more than a bit of a macro guru. I've got a lot of unique, one-of-a-kind, ingenious macro lighting inventions, including this one is one among many, and fiber optic mods, which you can make yourself, and I've already made videos on those. The lens has been actually quite startling. I was not expecting this. I figured, well, Fuji's going to make a macro lens, also be good for portraiture. $900 for the 90mm versus $1,200 for the 80mm macro. For additional $300, you get a lens that is not only basically twice as fast as the 90, and I made sure of that before making that statement. Yes, twice as fast as a 90mm continuous autofocus between near and far subject. Made sure of that. I tested that and retested it literally over 30 times. Optical image stabilization, you actually have a dual-purpose lens you could use for basically anything, including portraiture, and specifically also, hello, of course, macro photography. Very contrasty, very rich lens. This is some of the bokeh shots, I think shot at a wedding by someone else who added to the Flickr group. This is actually a shot of some colored pencils I did yesterday. I did a lot of shooting with it with some of my macro lighting mods. So this is now Fujifilm's fastest autofocus lens, period. Not my opinion, just flat out is. By the way, these are, this is, well, as I use a hairdresser's head, as you can see the difference between the bokeh and the autofocus elements, so between the 80mm and the 90. And then the 80 is definitely sharper than the 90. I actually did multiple shots on tripod and was looking at which one was had a better resolution. And it is the 80. This is as clear as the nose on your face. This is the best out of each lens out of 4 shots taken of identical images. This is a really tight crop. The lens is absolutely phenomenal. I really am, and I have to say that because, you know, I don't like anybody to buy a lens that they don't want to buy or disappointed because I said one thing and it turns out to be another. I've done a lot of testing on this lens, and I actually have to say that the lens really shocked me. I was not expecting it. I thought it would be, you know, as good as the 90. Actually, I thought it might be slightly less. I thought, well, quad linear motors in the 90mm, there's no way it could be faster. Well, it is. Many actually factors go into autofocus speed, not only the mass and weight of the elements, but the type of autofocus system. This not only uses linear motors, it also uses a ceramic roller ball mech, which you can look on Fujifilm's website for alignment for autofocus, but also I assume for peak resolution, where the actual plane of focus between the focusing elements is perfectly in line with fore and aft elements. This kind of says it all, doesn't it? This is just like a 2-minute shot I did of a $100 bill. Good God. I mean, good God. I could have got even closer to this. This was not, none of these shots, by the way, even though I have the 1.4 teleconverter, which I highly recommend for this lens. You can use this with the 50 to 140 and the 100 to 400. This turns the 80mm into a 112mm macro lens, which is, like I said, macro size is important. Not only resolution is incredibly important, but being able to back up from your subject so you can drop some lighting in is incredibly important. I'm nothing short of stunned of the lens, honestly, and you know, I made sure I was accurate in beating myself over the head before making this statement. I actually give this lens a 10 out of 10. Really, I should give it like a 9.7 out of 10. The only issue this lens has, and it has to do with the autofocus mech, is that when you go to review an image, okay, I've taken a shot, you go to review the image, hit the playback button. I have my playback button up here, in addition to back here, which I never use that one. The power is dropped to the lens. When the power is dropped to the lens, those free-floating elements for autofocus are on rails and that ceramic ball on a roller system. The power is dropped to it, and so the lens goes like a limp puppet. So when you hit the preview button, the lens goes thunk, and then when you go half press the shutter release button to return to shooting, the lens, of course, regains power. Power is dropped to the lens, and then the linear motors actually bring the elements back taut under power, and then lens goes thunk again. So every time you hit playback and return to shooting, it's thunk, thunk, thunk. And well, the 90mm also does that. You can actually hear there's no power, the camera's off, duh. It's not that sound, it's actually much louder than that because power is dropped or power is activated, and so it is much louder than that. I guess I could replicate that right now. And if I go to hit the preview button and return to shooting, it's not really an issue at all. It's not. It's like the lens is as if, you know, you were to blow a bullhorn into someone's ear that was quietly sleeping, and they get startled and they fall out of bed. It's something analogous to that, but that's not really an issue. It doesn't pertain to either autofocus nor does it pertain to resolution. It's just the nature of the beast of the linear motors and apparently the ceramic ball roller mech that's in this lens, because the 90 has the linear motors as well, but it's nowhere near as loud as that. So is that an issue? Not really. I thought I'd mention it because someone's going to say, oh, this lens is really loud when I turn it off or on, or go to hit preview on my images. It's like, well, yeah. So literally like a 9.8 out of 10. It is better than the Tachyna, and it's, like I said, I own more macro lenses than anybody you'll meet. That's not bragging. So when I tell you that this is the best macro lens out there, shy of spending $12,000 for a manual focus contacts macro lens, I do mean it. Here's the bokeh at f2.8. You can actually see we have a swirly cat's eye bokeh at f2.8. But this is not bad swirly cat's eye bokeh. I'm not talking about Russian Petzval lens swirly bokeh, where the background makes you want to throw up like you got your head in a washing machine. So this actually gets my highest rate. I was not expecting this out of this lens. I was not. Fujifilm must have, whoever, the team, obviously it was not one person, the team that put this lens together really stuck their nose to the grindstone and did everything right. So let me repeat that again by saying fastest Fujifilm lens, bar none. Bar none. The sharpest Fujifilm lens, bar none, absolutely no, there is no disputing that. Over the 90 it has optical image stabilization, which it does not have, and for $300 more, you know, you get a dual purpose, or really a tri-purpose lens, portraiture, general, whatever, yeah, that's a category, right, and of course macro photography. The lens is absolutely a stunning, the lens is really damn stunning. It is about 15% longer and heavier than the 90mm, so it is a larger lens. Yeah, I got the lens hood here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. There we go. Comes with a pouch, and obviously comes with a lens hood. You're very familiar with that. Yeah, it's just some experimenting around macro. This shot is stunning, and this is, of course, only a high-res JPEG. You know, the RAW. Each one of those chips is the size of a grain of rice. I can see the architect. I can't get that out of any other macro lens, and I've got the really expensive 200mm f4 Nikkor macro, the king of macro lenses. Tachyna 100mm, 55mm macro, 150mm macro, the Sigma. Oh God, yeah, I own one Sigma lens. The 150mm, because I'm a macro slut. The 150mm macro Sigma, oh God, doesn't even come close. It's like, well, it's 150mm, you should be able to really reach in there. Well, you can, but it's not this sharp. So, I can't recommend this Fujifilm lens higher. I'm glad my copy's on the way. This is a rental because mine didn't come in time. I can't imagine anybody being unhappy with this lens. And if you don't own a 90mm and you want to make a decision between the two, I would recommend the 80 over the 90. Not that there's anything wrong with the 90. F2 versus f2.8, you know, OIS. This gives you gives you basically a 3-stop advantage for low light photography. It's like, well, it's a 2.8, it's not that fast of a lens. You know, this is also not meant to be a really low light lens either. But with OIS, you know, you have what you could get out of a non-OIS f1.8 or f1.4, since it does have image stabilization. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, you can always click the link below and help a brother out, as they say. Or you could tell me to jump off a cliff, but I want you to be happy, okay? It's not about selling anything to you because I don't have affiliate links. No matter what you buy, I don't get a kickback. You know, my aim is to help you. And I really like doing that. I don't want anybody to be unhappy. You know, no matter what you think of me, you better believe me when I tell you I never want to get an email from someone saying, I bought so-and-so off your recommendation and I'm so unhappy. I think to goodness out of the endless tens of thousands of lenses that I've sold other people, I can think of like only a couple times that has happened, and even those times I remember it was user error or someone got a bad copy. You know, there are bad copies of lenses out there, so I want you to be happy. You know, I don't make videos just to make videos, even though I make a ton of videos. I make a lot of videos to be helpful on a lot of different subjects, so thank you so much for watching. And yes, this lens is woodpecker lips. It is the cat's fanny. It is all of that and a bag of chips. When you buy the 80mm Fuji macro, you are riding the gravy train on biscuit wheels. Really, the lens is that good. Let's put the humor aside and just say this lens is just, oh God. Yeah, it is that good. Size of a grain of rice. I can count the micro resistors here easily, and that's only on the JPEG. Yeah, I don't shoot JPEG, okay? I shoot RAW plus fine. Don't say I shoot JPEG. I can't upload RAW files to Flickr, however. You feel me, brother? Okay, thank you so much for watching. Catch you later. До свидания. Aloha, пока. Hasta luego. Увидимся, as the Russians would say. Точно. Договорились, as the Russians would also say. Bye.